It was a night carved from the very bones of fear, a night when the forest swallowed the road and the storm above roared like some ancient beast unleashed, and three friends Alex, Mia, and David found themselves driving deeper into nowhere, their car crawling forward on a narrow stretch of asphalt that seemed forgotten by time itself, the windshield blurred with relentless rain and the sound of thunder cracking so close it rattled their bones, and Alex gripped the wheel tighter, muttering, through clenched teeth, "We should be stayed back in town. I told you we should never have taken this road." But David leaned forward from the back seat, trying to mask his own unease with a half-hearted laugh. "Relax, it's just a storm, we'll be fine," though even he couldn't hide the way his voice trembled when lightning ripped across the sky and for a brief instant revealed the dark wall of trees surrounding them like prison bars, and Mia, hunched over her phone with trembling hands, whispered, "The signal-'s gone, the map's useless, it's like this place doesn't exist," and her words carried a weight that made the silence in the car heavier than the storm itself until suddenly she gasped, pointing through the rain-streaked glass, "Wait, up ahead look," and there it was, looming through the sheets of water like a phantom rising from the earth, a house, massive and decayed, its roof jagged against the sky like broken teeth, its windows black and endless like empty sockets, staring back at them, and Alex shook his head instantly. "No, absolutely not, we're not going in there," but as if mocking him, the fuel light on the dashboard blinked red, a reminder of their limited options, and David, desperate and shivering, said, "We don't have gas to keep moving and the storm's only getting worse, we need shelter, just for a while," and thunder boomed so loud it seemed to answer his plea, forcing Alex to grit his teeth and steer the car toward the rusted iron gates that hung crookedly at the edge of the property, the hinges groaning as though in protest when the wind pushed against them, and the gravel crunched under the tires as the vehicle rolled closer to the mansion that loomed larger with every passing second, swallowing the sky, until Alex finally stopped and all three of them sat in silence, staring at the monolith of wood and stone that radiated an aura of something ancient and wrong, and Mia's voice was barely audible when she whispered, "Why does it feel like it's waiting for us?" But David was already opening his door, rain lashing his face as he shouted over the storm, "It's just an old house, come on," and so they all stepped out, their clothes soaked instantly, their breaths visible in the chill of the night, and together they pushed the heavy front door that resisted them with a groan so deep it sounded almost like a wounded cry, and when it finally swung inward, the smell hit them, dampness, rot, and something else beneath it all, something metallic and sharp, like the lingering trace of blood, and Alex muttered, "This is a mistake," but Mia clutched his hand and whispered, "Just until the storm passes," her eyes wide and frightened. And so they crossed the threshold, the floorboards groaning beneath their steps as though the house itself shuddered at their presence, and then the door slammed shut behind them with such force that all three jumped, spinning around, but the door stood there unmoved, sealed, and David muttered with false confidence, "The wind did that, right?" though even he didn't believe it, and when they turned their eyes forward, they found themselves in a grand hall, the walls lined with faded portraits of people whose painted eyes followed them with unnerving realism, eyes that gleamed faintly whenever the lightning flashed outside, and Mia whispered, "They're watching us," but Alex forced himself to scoff, "It's just pain," even as he couldn't shake the chill crawling down his spine, and they moved deeper, their footsteps echoing unnaturally loud, each sound swallowed too quickly by the darkness, and the air grew heavier with every step, until suddenly a voice, soft and low, drifted through the hall, a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, "Welcome home," and all three froze, staring at each other in shock, their hearts hammering, and David shouted, "Who is there?" but no answer came, only the creak of the house shifting around them, and then the faint sound of footsteps retreating deeper into the shadows, deliberate and slow, as if inviting them to follow, and despite Alex's protest, We should leave right now." The house seemed to laugh at him with another thunderclap outside, rattling the windows and shaking the chandeliers that hung precariously from the ceiling, and David, stubborn and reckless, took the lead. "We'll just look around. Maybe there's a phone. Maybe someone lives here," though the way the dust clung to every surface and the cobwebs stretched across the corners told a different story, and Mia clung to Alex as they followed reluctantly, moving down a corridor where the wallpaper peeled like rotting skin, where mirrors hung cracked and warped, reflecting their faces in grotesque distortions, and as they passed one such mirror, Mia gasped and pulled Alex back, whispering, "Did you see that?" But when Alex looked, he only saw their own frightened reflections staring back at them, though for the briefest second he thought he saw another face behind them, pale and grinning, and when he blinked it was gone, leaving only his own haunted eyes staring back, and so they pressed on, the corridor growing colder with each step, their breaths fogging in the air, until they reached a door at the end, tall and carved with symbols none of them recognized, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when the lightning flashed, and Alex shook his head firmly. "We are not opening that," but David was already reaching for the handle, muttering, "It's just a door," and the moment his hand touched the metal, a chill shot through him so violently he staggered back, clutching his arm, his face pale, and he whispered, something's alive in there," and before they could decide what to do, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a room bathed in darkness so complete it seemed to devour the light of their phones when they tried to shine it. Inside, and from within came a sound, a soft, wet dragging noise, like something crawling across the floor, followed by a laugh, high-pitched and childlike, echoing unnaturally in the silence, and Mia screamed, pulling Alex backward, but David, entranced, stepped closer, whispering, "Hello," and the laugh grew louder, shifting into something inhuman, a chorus of voices overlapping, whispering his name, "David, David, David," until suddenly something moved in the darkness, a shape, twisted and wrong, rushing toward them with impossible speed, and Alex grabbed David, yanking him back just as the door slammed shut so hard the walls shook, and when they looked at it again, the carvings were gone, the door now plain and rotten as though it had never been different, and David stammered, "What the hell was that?" But no one had an answer, only the pounding of their hearts filling the silence as the storm raged outside and the house seemed to settle around them, alive, waiting, watching. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, and Mia clung tighter to Alex, whispering, "We have to leave, we have to get out now," but Alex pulled her closer, shaking his head, "I don't think it's going to let us leave," and as if the house heard him, the sound of locks clicking echoed from somewhere deep within the walls, like unseen hands sliding bolts into place, trapping them, and David, trying to keep calm though sweat mingled with the rainwater still dripping from his hair, said, "We'll find another exit, a back door, a window, anything," but his voice faltered when they turned and saw that the hallway behind them, the one they had just walked down, was different now, longer, stretching into darkness as though the house had rearranged itself, swallowing their way out, and Mia whimpered, "It's changing, it doesn't want us to go," and her words were punctuated by the sudden sound of a piano note, sharp and clear, drifting from somewhere upstairs, a single key struck with deliberate force, followed by another, and another, forming a slow, haunting melody that seemed to vibrate in their bones, and David muttered, "Someone's here," but Alex's face was grim, or something, and despite every instinct screaming at them to run, their feet carried them toward the grand staircase, each step creaking under their weight as if the house enjoyed their struggle, and the melody grew louder, more discordant, notes crashing together until it was less music and more the wail of something in pain, and when they reached the landing, they saw the piano at the far end of the corridor, its keys pressing down on their own, no hands to guide them, just invisible force slamming the ivory with such violence splinters flew, and then it stopped, leaving behind silence so suffocating it pressed on their chests, and Mia whispered, "We're not alone," and in the silence that followed, another sound replaced it, the faint laughter of a child echoing down the hallway, high and eerie, bouncing off the walls until they couldn't tell where it came from, and Alex gritted his teeth. "It wants us to follow," and David, with trembling hands, whispered, "Then maybe if we do, it'll show us a way out," though even as he said it he didn't believe it, and yet they moved forward, the corridor stretching unnaturally long, the wallpaper now blackened with mold, portraits hanging at crooked angles, their painted faces twisted into grotesque sneers that hadn't been there before, and the laughter grew closer, louder, until finally they reached a door slightly ajar, light flickering within, and David pushed it open, revealing a nursery, the walls faded with peeling paint of cheerful colors long since dulled, a rocking chair swaying gently in the corner though no one sat in it, and in the middle of the room sat a small wooden cradle, rocking slowly, and Mia froze, clutching Alex's arm, whispering, "Don't look in it," but David stepped forward, unable to resist, and when he leaned over the cradle, his face went pale, his body rigid, and Alex grabbed him, pulling him back, demanding, "What did you see?" But David only shook his head violently, whispering, "Eyes, it had eyes staring right at me, too many eyes," and suddenly the cradle stopped rocking, the silence more dreadful than the movement, until a low hiss seeped from within, rising in pitch until it became a scream that shattered the glass of the window, shards flying across the room as Mia screamed, ducking into Alex's chest, and David stumbled back as the cradle burst into flames, fire spreading across the floor in tendrils that writhed like living things, and the three bolted into the hallway, the door slamming behind them with such force dust rained from the ceiling, and Alex gasped, "This place wants to kill us," and David shouted, "No, it wants to play with us," his face pale and eyes wide, like the thought had been placed in his head rather than formed by his own, and before Alex could argue, the laughter returned, louder, closer, accompanied by the sound of footsteps small, rapid, racing toward them from the shadows, and without thinking they ran, sprinting down the corridor that seemed to twist and bend, doors slamming open and shut on either side as unseen things moved within the rooms, whispering, chanting in a language that scraped against their ears like broken glass, and then suddenly the corridor ended at a door far taller than the rest, carved from black wood that seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat, and Alex shouted, "No. We're not opening that," but the door swung inward on its own, and an icy wind pulled them inside, extinguishing the lights of their phones as darkness swallowed them whole, and within that blackness they heard the whispers again, louder now, clearer, forming words, "Stay, forever, forever," and Mia screamed, her voice echoing endlessly in the void, and when the darkness finally thinned, they found themselves in a dining hall, a massive table stretching the length of the room, candles burning though no one had lit them, their flames black instead of gold, casting shadows that danced like living creatures on the walls, and at the table sat figures, dozens of them, unmoving, rotted, their flesh hanging in strips from bone, their empty sockets fixed on the intruders, and one by one, in perfect unison, the corpses raised their heads and whispered, "Welcome home," their voices a chorus of decay, and Mia collapsed against Alex, sobbing, "It won't let us go, it wants us to stay," and David, trembling but drawn forward as though in a trance, muttered, "Maybe we already belong here," and as he reached for the table, one of the corpses slowly lifted its hand, bony fingers curling toward him, and Alex lunged, pulling him back, shouting, "Snap out of it," but the corpse's grin widened, teeth yellow and jagged, and the whole room erupted in laughter, the sound deafening, pressing in on them until it felt like their skulls would crack, and then the candles went out, plunging them into blackness again, and something moved in that dark, something massive, crawling across the ceiling, its claws scratching, its breath hot and rancid dripping down on their faces, and Alex screamed, pulling Mia close, shouting, "Run!" But there was nowhere to run, the doors gone, the windows sealed, only the sound of claws circling them in the dark, and then silence, broken only by the sound of their own frantic breathing, until a whisper slid right between them, cold and clear, "You'll never leave."